Risk management, science or politics? Risk analysis is a field of work that includes risk assessment, risk communication, and risk management. And risk management, it turns out, is more a question of politics than science. Risk assessment is a scientific process that attempts to determine the size of a risk and the factors that impact it. Risk assessment is performed using data from scientific literature or other high-quality datasets. Risk communication is exactly what you might imagine, talking to stakeholders about the risks discovered in a risk assessment. Risk management is the process of taking the information from a risk assessment and using it to prioritise risk mitigation activities, in effect deciding what to do about the risk. Unlike risk assessment, risk management is not informed so much by science as by politics. So said the esteemed food safety guru, Professor Don Schaffner, in a recent food safety webinar hosted by Virginia Tech. Professor Don Schaffner suggests that most food safety professionals who work in industry, as opposed to academia, are some sort of risk manager, and went on to describe risk management as a political process. And I'm going to repeat what Don said in the webinar here, so this is a direct quote. Risk management is not a scientific process. It should hopefully be informed by science and informed by the scientific process, but I would characterise it as a political process. And we're talking political not as in political parties, but it's really a management process and it's not science. It really is dealing with trade-offs that are not always able to be expressed quantitatively. A risk assessment should never tell a risk manager what to do. The risk assessment should lay out for the manager what the options are, and then it's up to the manager to make a decision about what to actually do about that risk. So yes, a risk assessment does not tell a risk manager what to do. It just categorises or ranks the risks so that decisions about how to deal with them can be made more effectively. In food safety, risk management aims to reduce the risk posed by a food safety hazard, such as salmonella or glass fragment contamination, usually by taking action that will make the hazard less likely to occur. For hazards like salmonella or glass, it's a no-brainer. In food manufacturing processes, there are well-defined control systems for eliminating those hazards. For example, cooking processes can destroy salmonella. Risk management processes for hazards like salmonella and glass rarely need to be debated. However, in the webinar I mentioned, Professor Schaffner was talking about risk management in the context of agricultural water, specifically food safety hazards that arise in fresh produce from agricultural water like irrigation water and wash water. How much salmonella is okay in water used for irrigating a potato field? And how often should you test for it? Should levels be different for a field of lettuce since lettuce is eaten raw? Maybe, but how do you figure out the exact limits? These are the type of questions that keep food safety experts like Professor Schaffner awake at night. Risk assessment processes aim to quantify the risk posed by a hazard. Once the risk has been quantified, it's up to the risk manager to decide what to do about it. This means weighing up the costs, benefits and downsides of various mitigation actions. The final course of action taken by a food or farming business will depend on the business's appetite for risk, its approach to compliance, and its willingness or ability to bear the financial cost of the mitigation activity. Often this will involve delicate discussions between people with different attitudes to risks and costs. In other words, it's political. And there is the link in the email to watch a full replay of the webinar here in the email. Our April Food Safety News Roundup also includes an example of a quantitative, so science-based risk assessment calculation done with norovirus and oysters.